The alien woman saw me, turned to her friends, and declared, "That's my husband." I was 3 days into my rotation at the Threshold Station commissary, restocking protein cartons and minding absolutely nobody's business, when a 7-foot-tall woman, with skin like brushed copper and eyes the color of a dying star, turned from her group of friends, looked directly at me, and said the words that would ruin my entire week. "That's my husband." I dropped a carton of synth protein. It hit the floor with a sad little slap. "I'm sorry." "What?" The station wasn't quiet exactly. Threshold never was, not with 40 species crammed into a trade hub the size of a small moon. But the 4 Valkyrie women, standing around her, all turned to look at me with the kind of focused, predatory curiosity usually reserved for interesting rock samples. One of them actually leaned down to get a better look, the way you'd inspect produce. "He is smaller than I expected," she said, not unkindly, just factually, like she was cataloging me. "I am not anybody's husband," I said, holding up both hands, one of which was still holding a second protein carton like a shield. "I've never met this woman in my life. The copper-skinned woman, and I want to be clear, she was stunning." Which did not help my ability to process this situation rationally, tilted her head at me with an expression I can only describe as fondly exasperated. Like I was a dog who'd wandered off the leash again. "You don't remember," she said. Not a question. "Remember what?" "The bonding ceremony on Velcara Prime 4 cycles ago." I stared at her. I had never in my life been to Velcara Prime. I had, as a matter of fact, never left the Sol system before this posting, and I'd only been on Threshold Station for 72 hours, most of which I'd spent trying to figure out where the good coffee substitute was hidden. "I have never been to Velcara Prime," I said, very slowly, the way you talk to someone you're worried might be armed. "I have never been bonded to anyone. I stock shelves. My name is Danny. I'm from Ohio." This, for reasons I did not understand, made all 4 of her friends gasp audibly and turn to stare at her instead of me, which felt like a small mercy until I realized the stare was somehow worse for her than it had been for me. "Severina," one of them said, in a tone dripping with scandal, "you told us he remembered. He should remember," Severina said, and for the first time there was a crack in her composure, something uncertain underneath the 7 feet of regal confidence. "The imprinting was successful. The elders confirmed it." "What imprinting?" I said. "What elders?" "I need somebody to explain what is happening right now, because I have a supervisor who is going to ask me why there is protein slop on the floor of aisle C, and I don't currently have an answer for her either." Severina crouched, actually crouched, bringing those star-dying eyes level with mine, and up close, I could see the fine copper scales along her cheekbones catch the fluorescent light like something out of a dream I definitely hadn't had, and studied my face with an intensity that made me want to apologize for something, anything, just to make it stop. "You human," she said, half to herself. "Yes. The scanner said the imprint matched a human male aboard this station. There's probably more than one human male aboard this station, lady. It's a trade hub." "Severina," said the tallest of her friends, in the weary voice of someone who has had this exact argument before, "I told you the matching algorithm from that black market broker was going to be garbage. You paid an unlicensed vendor for a soul bond imprint from a kiosk next to the noodle stand." There was a full 10 seconds of silence. I want to tell you I used those 10 seconds wisely, but mostly I just stood there holding a protein carton, watching the situation collapse in real time, like a dying star of its own. "There was a discount," Severina finally admitted, quietly, staring at the floor. "Oh my God," I said. It isn't supposed to work like that," she said, straightening up. some of the regal bearing trying valiantly to reassert itself, and mostly failing. The scanner is meant to locate your true match, according to the imprint ceremony. It found a match. It said human male, threshold station, sector 9. I saw you, and I was so certain. You scammed yourself, I said, and I wanted on record that I did not say this unkindly, but it came out a little flat, because I was still recalibrating from. Total stranger claims I'm her husband. 2. Total stranger got fleeced by a Solbond scanner she bought next to a noodle stand. Her friends were, at this point, in various stages of trying not to laugh, badly. One of them had actually turned around entirely and was making a sound like a leaking valve into her own hand. Sevrena's copper skin darkened at the cheeks. I'd learn later that was the Velkarai equivalent of blushing, and it is, for the record, extremely visible. There's no hiding it. The whole face just goes the color of a new penny, and she drew herself up to her full and frankly intimidating height. I apologize, she said, with the stiff dignity of someone trying to salvage what remained of her afternoon. This was a misunderstanding of my own making. I will not trouble you further. And here's the thing. Here's the part where, if this were a smarter story, I would have just said, no worries, good luck, and gone back to my protein cartons, and never thought about it again. But she looked so thoroughly, catastrophically embarrassed, standing there in front of her friends, who were absolutely never going to let her live this down, and there was something about the way her jaw was set, trying so hard to keep it together in front of people who clearly loved teasing her, that made me do something monumentally stupid instead. Hey, I said, for what it's worth, that's a hell of a scam. Whoever ran that kiosk, they saw you coming and thought discount Solbond. Sure, why not? That's not on you. That's just good marketing, bad ethics. She blinked at me. You're not upset, she said. I'm mildly upset about the protein carton, I said, gesturing at the floor. You, personally, seem like you just got had by a guy selling knockoff Destiny out of a kiosk. I've been there. Different context. Similar energy. One of her friends made the leaking valve noise again, harder this time. Severena looked at me for a long moment, and something in her expression shifted, the mortification easing into something more like genuine, cautious amusement, the corner of her mouth twitching despite herself. You are taking this remarkably well for a man who was just claimed as a husband by a stranger. Ohio prepares you for a lot of things, I said. Not this specifically, but a lot of things. I don't know what an Ohio is. Nobody does. That's kind of the point. And that, I promise you, this is the whole embarrassing truth of it, was the moment she actually laughed. A real one, surprised out of her, low and warm, and her friends went absolutely feral with delight, because apparently Severena, laughing at a stranger's joke 30 seconds after a public Solbond humiliation, was itself some kind of noteworthy event. I owe you a drink, at minimum, she said, for the carton, and for not being cruel about the kiosk. I get off shift in 2 hours, I said, which is not a sentence I had planned to say to anyone that day, let alone a woman who just tried to claim me as her husband in front of witnesses. I will be here, she said. And then, glancing sideways at her friends with a look that dared any of them to comment further, she added, not as my husband, yet. Absolutely not. Yet. I agreed. Her friends did not stop laughing until well after she'd walked away. I finished restocking aisle C. My supervisor did, in fact, ask about the protein slop, and I did not have a good answer for her. I told her the truth, more or less. That a woman had bought a bootleg Soulmate scanner from a kiosk next to the noodle stand, that it had pointed at me for reasons that remain scientifically unclear, and that I had agreed to get a drink with her anyway. My supervisor, who has been running this commissary for 11 years, and has seen every species in the galaxy try to buy every kind of nonsense from every kind of unlicensed vendor, did not even look up from her tablet. Threshold station, she said. Every week, something. She wasn't wrong. But I want it on record. For whoever reads this later, for whoever inevitably ends up asking me how I met my wife, that as far as I'm concerned, the kiosk owner should get a cut of the wedding. Discount soul bond or not, the scanner wasn't actually wrong. It was just early.